I will yield to you, my friend.
Thank you, Senator Rosen. Well, first off, congratulations on your nominations. Thanks for your willingness to serve. Let me start with Ambassador de Sombry. So, as we know, Communist China has, they've decided to be our enemy. Their government is despicable. They're sending fentanyl across our border, killing over 70,000 people a year. They've never complied with the trade agreement. The WTO, they steal our technology. Many of the things they send here are unsafe. If they violate any agreement, there's no way to get recourse in China against them. So what can you do in this new role to hold Communist China accountable? I think if there's anybody that can get a deal that makes sense with them, it's probably President Trump, but I just don't believe, they didn't even comply with the Trump trade deal in his first term. So what do you think you can do to hold them accountable?
Senator, thank you very much for that question. I think you've given a very good list of many of the challenges that we have with China. You're definitely correct in the fact that they've been calling us their adversary and enemy for a long period of time, and it's taken us a while to come to appreciate that, and we need to deal with that. As I indicated in my opening remarks, working with our allies and partners to enhance deterrence and counter the blind activities by our adversaries, including China, is one of our top priorities. I further agree with you completely that if we're going to reach agreements with China, we need to make sure that they actually follow them, and the way to do that is for them to actually show us what they're doing, not commit to what they're going to do. And that's a challenge that we need to face, and I'll be eager to work, if confirmed, on trying to solve that issue, and I believe definitely putting pressure via our allies and partners of the region is one of the important elements.
So it's my understanding you've done quite a bit of business in Hong Kong. I have a friend, Jimmy Lai, who is a journalist who was wrongfully detained by the Hong Kong authorities, which clearly is doing Xi's bidding. They've stripped Jimmy of his wealth. I think he's been in solitary confinement for over 4 years. Given your knowledge and experience with Hong Kong and the region and Communist China, first of all, you're familiar with this situation, and what have you been able to do and what can you do to help Jimmy?
Senator, thank you very much for raising that very important issue. I am very familiar with that. I'm very familiar with the fact that China is engaged in repeated violations of the Sino-British Joint Declaration that required them to maintain the high degree of autonomy, rule of law, and democratic freedoms in Hong Kong, which have not been so maintained. I'm aware of what has happened to Jimmy Lai and understand that President Trump has called for Jimmy Lai to be freed and should be freed.
Is there anything else we can do?
I think, thank you, Senator, for that question. There probably are other things that we can do, and I definitely, if confirmed, we'll look into that. I think the situation in Hong Kong, I mean, from a personal note, is deeply troubling to me. I lived in Hong Kong from 1997, before the handover, until 2020, when I moved down to assume the position as ambassador to Thailand. And there's a reason why I didn't move back to Hong Kong after that. And it's really personally deeply troubling to see what's happened to Hong Kong. It's not the place that it was before.
Mr. Pratt, I just got back from a trip to Europe, and I met with military and elected officials in Denmark, Finland, and Estonia. And to a person, they complained about our foreign military sales and the fact that, they just can't get an answer. They've watched what Putin is doing. They're afraid that they're going to be invaded, so they want to build up their military. So one, they can't get a decision out of our government to allow them to buy the equipment they want to buy, and then number two, our manufacturers don't produce it on time. So in this role, what can you do to change that?
Thank you for that question, Senator. Certainly, I'm familiar with those complaints, and certainly building up our partners in Scandinavia is critically important to countering the Russian influence. And I commit to, if confirmed, taking a thorough review of those issues and seeing how we can get those resolved.
You think, will you put time into understanding, like it's pretty simple. There ought to be a streamlined way of getting this done. Say yes or no. When I'm a business guy, and what frustrates me about government is just tell me no. If you're not going to sell it, if you're not let me do it, I'll go someplace else. But what we're doing is we don't tell them anything. We keep them in the dark. And then even when they get approval, they have no idea whether our manufacturers are going to show up and give and provide it on any reasonable period of time. So, are you going to work with both trying to streamline the process and get our manufacturers to actually do their job?
Yes, sir. And again, I'm familiar with those complaints and very much committed to addressing them. And as you point out, part of that is working with industry to figure out what the problem areas are. Part of that's working with the Department of Defense to figure out how they can be more engaged. And certainly, I commit to working with both those partners to resolve this problem.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Scott. Senator, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ambassador